Alright, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power. I've got a couple of interesting stories for you guys today. The first story that I've got for you guys today, we got to talk about this recent pose down between Derek Lunsford and Samson Dauda. Now, this was on the Olympia TV YouTube channel. And I got to say, I do think they've done a good job of getting guys together. They did something similar with Ramon Dino and Chris Bumstead. They did something similar with the men's physique guys, Jeremy Buendia and Aaron Banks. So this was kind of a cool little collab that we got to see where there was a pose down between Samson and Derek. And I got to say, I was pleasantly surprised by Derek and actually how big Derek looked next to Samson Dauda, because what we know about Samson is he's big. He's 327 pounds as of his last guest posing this past weekend. He's also significantly taller than Derek. I mean, he's right around 6 foot, and I think Derek is like 5'5", 5'6". From being around Derek in person, I'd say that's probably where he's at. But I thought Derek looked really impressively big here. And obviously, we did just get to see Samson and Derek at the Pittsburgh Pro guest posing, but we didn't get to see them directly next to each other as much as we did get to see it here in the majority of the poses. And of course, we already saw them at the Olympia, and we know that Derek placed second, so significantly higher than Samson, so it's not that surprising. But it's just that off-season Samson is so much heavier than he is on stage. I believe he competes in the 290s, or he was in the 290s at the Arnold Classic. And here, he's almost 30 pounds heavier than that, so pretty significant size increase when Samson's in the off-season. And I think Derek is around 260 in the off-season, even though he actually looked like he was in a little bit better shape than Samson here. Even though Samson competed much more recently at the Arnold Classic, and he's been doing all these guest posing. But honestly, I just think this is an interesting comparison to see just these two guys, because on a competitive stage or even on the Pittsburgh Pro stage, like I mentioned, it's not just the two of them. You got a whole lineup of guys, but seeing just these two specific guys, you know, with all this talk about Samson after the Arnold Classic, about him being a potential Mr. Olympia winner, a lot of hype behind Samson right now. And he did beat Nick Walker at the Arnold Classic, and Nick was who was directly behind Derek at the Olympia. So if you follow that logic, maybe Samson is now the guy that would be in that conversation pushing Derek now instead of Nick, if we see the same thing happen at the Arnold happen at the Olympia this year. But I really think the interesting thing about this comparison, aside from just the sheer size difference, is Derek's probably strongest point is his back. His back poses are probably the strongest of any of his poses, maybe with the exception of his like front relaxed, front double bicep, the crazy V-taper that he has there. But he's got a really crazy strong back, probably one of the strongest backs in the Olympia lineup. And a lot of people point to Samson's weak point as being his back, that being the one point that people say he really needs to bring this up in addition to conditioning. It's the back. So that's one thing, that's one hurdle that Samson is going to have a really difficult time overcoming with Derek, and I think you can see that pretty clearly in this comparison. It's just how crazy Derek's back is next to Samson's, and that's going to be the challenge that Samson faces at the Olympia if he wants to overcome Derek. It's going to be those back poses that are going to be really difficult for him to beat. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. In this posing video, Derek or Samson? Who do you think wins? Who do you think looks more impressive? Who do you think looks better overall? And who do you think will place higher at the 2023 Olympia, which is now just a few months away? Now, next up in the news, we did get a physique update from Shaaban, and I think this is a pretty impressive physique update from Muhammad. And I'm interested to see where he decides to show up to compete next, because he teased competing at both Toronto and Cali, these two recent shows that we had. But he didn't show up to either of them. And there was one comment in his comment section of this picture where they asked him when he's planning on competing next. And he said, his response was kind of vague. He just said, still working to be better. We do got the Orlando Pro coming up. That could be an option. But I think he looks really good here. And I think based on this update, I think he would have been a pretty big factor at either Cali or Toronto had he showed up to compete. And he's a guy that might not be on a lot of people's radar right now because we haven't seen him in a while. But I do really think, based on how he's looking here, if he pops up at one of these upcoming shows, could be Orlando, it could be as far as Texas, you got Chicago, Tampa. There's a lot of shows still on the radar. I feel like he could be a threat at those shows based on this update. And I'm kind of expecting him to pop into one of them and surprise a lot of people with how good he's going to look. He's a really good bodybuilder. So just keep him on the radar. Be on the lookout for Shaaban. Now, speaking of that Orlando Pro, we did get a recent physique update from none other than Hassan Mostafa. Now, this was a couple days ago, but he looks to me to be significantly more conditioned at this point in his prep for Orlando than he did for Toronto. I mean, he looks pretty crazy in this update. And this, like I said, this was a couple days ago, and the Orlando Pro is July 1st, so he's still got a couple weeks till that show. He looks really dry and really crispy in this update. And that Toronto Pro where he took second to Ian Valliere, as you guys know, was kind of a controversial placing. A lot of people had Hassan winning that show, and a lot of people are excited to see him back on stage again, myself included. I really want to see Hassan win a show. I want to see him get to the Olympia because he didn't get to compete last year due to that health issue, so he didn't compete at the doctor's advice. And I want to see him on the Olympia stage, how he would do, because I really think these most recent couple of years, particularly like the last 18 months of Hassan Mostafa, the last like year and a half, we've really started to see the best version of Hassan over those past couple competitions. He really seems to be hitting his stride, really figuring out his peak and really figuring out his conditioning, because that was something he struggled with for a long time. He's always been this kind of mass monster, tons of muscle guy, but now he's really starting to figure out the conditioning, and he's really starting to come in with a very competitive package at these shows. And of course, we don't know quite yet who all is going to show up and compete at that Orlando Pro. We're probably going to have the competitor list in less than a week now. But whoever shows up, Hassan is the guy that I'm expecting to be one of the favorites, if not the favorite, to win that show. Based on what we saw in Toronto, just a very, very competitive version of Hassan Mostafa. And I'm expecting to see possibly better at this Orlando Pro. Now, next up in the news, I thought this was interesting, even though we talk about not talking about Kai Greene. I thought it was interesting because this is the first public guest posing that we've seen from Kai Greene in what seems like a very long time. And this was at the Sheru Classic in India. And for a guy that hasn't competed for the better part of a decade, and for all intents and purposes seems to be retired from actually competing, I thought I was actually pretty impressed by the amount of size that Kai still has, because Kai does post a lot of physique updates and stuff on his Instagram, but it's hard to tell with Kai whether or not they're recent. But we know for a fact this guest posing was, and he still looks to be a guy that's like around 300 pounds. I mean, he still looks like he's holding a ton of muscle for a guy that's in his late 40s. I mean, according to Google, Kai is 47 years old. So while I'm impressed that Kai's holding all this muscle and he still looks pretty big, I just don't see the point of it, because honestly, I really am convinced that we're never going to see Kai compete on a pro bodybuilding stage ever again. As much as he has teased it, and he really hasn't teased it in a long time, so I don't even think it's worth talking about, I think he's done competing. I think the question is, at what point is he going to start downsizing and focusing on his health? I mean, I thought, maybe there's a little bit of conversation around the Masters Olympia. He's clearly not doing that. So what really is the point at his age to be holding on to this much size? I mean, he's got to be close to 300 pounds in this video. I'm just honestly kind of surprised that he doesn't look downsized, that he doesn't look smaller. And I just kind of wonder what he's waiting for, because we've seen in recent years that bodybuilding past a certain age seems to just exponentially increase the risk of being a bodybuilder. Once you're holding on to a certain amount of size past a certain age, it's pretty dangerous. So I guess that's really why I wanted to mention that guest posing, is because, quite frankly, I was honestly surprised at how big Kai still looked at this guest posing. I wasn't sure if he really was still that big or not, and it looks like he is. But I'm not so sure if that's a good thing, at least from a health standpoint. I'm sure from a financial standpoint, they probably threw him a pretty substantial bag to go do this guest posing in India, because honestly, like I said, we haven't seen him do a guest posing like this in what seems like years. But just for the meme of it, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Kai Greene, what's the deal? Now, the final story that I have for you guys today, just for fun. In a recent interview, Arnold Schwarzenegger said he believes he could win the election for president if he were eligible to run in 2024. He recently did an interview with CNN's Chris Wallace, and when he was asked about if he was interested in running or if he would run, he responded and said, "Absolutely." He said, "Put me in because it's a no-brainer. I see so clearly how I would win that election." Now, the reason that Schwarzenegger can't run, as you guys know, he was the governor of California, but it's different between being a governor and a president. With a president, you've got to actually be born in the United States to be able to run to be president of the United States. Now, if that law didn't exist, Schwarzenegger could run, and arguably, I think he probably could win the 2024 election. But just for fun, in the comments down below, if Schwarzenegger were able to run, would you vote for him? And do you think he would win the election in 2024? And also just for fun, do you think that that law still serves a purpose, that you have to be born in the United States to be a United States president? Because Arnold is a United States citizen. He does have his citizenship but he just wasn't born here. That's the only thing disqualifying him. I don't see why the law couldn't be you just have to be a U.S. citizen to run for the presidency. Because what would be more symbolic of what America is than an immigrant being able to get their citizenship and then eventually become president of America? I mean, that's what the country is. That's what it's all about. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, click that bell notification icon, all that good stuff. And as always, I love you guys. Appreciate you guys. Nick Strength and Power signing out. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at Nick Strength Power. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.